History often remembers those who conquered the world, but it forgets those who stayed, adapted, and shaped it for centuries. How the Turks shaped Eurasia, before and after the Mongol age. Long before the Turks ever entered Anatolia, long before they became associated with cities, empires, and permanent borders, their story was already unfolding across the vast and unforgiving steppes of Central Asia. This was a world defined not by walls or monuments, but by movement. Survival depended on adaptability, discipline, and the ability to respond quickly to change. In such an environment, power was never static. Those who failed to adjust disappeared. Those who learned endured. The early Turkic world was not a single unified entity. It was a mosaic of tribes, clans, and confederations, bound together by language, culture, and shared ways of life rather than centralized authority. These groups rose and fell repeatedly, forming states that sometimes lasted only a few generations. Yet each collapse was not an ending. It was a lesson. Over centuries, the Turks accumulated an extraordinary level of political and military experience. Living on the steppe meant mastering warfare. Mobility, coordination, and discipline were not optional. They were necessities. Turkic warriors learned how to fight as units, how to retreat without collapsing, and how to reorganize after defeat. These skills would later make them indispensable to larger empires, and eventually capable of building empires of their own. But the Turks were not isolated. Their lands lay at the crossroads of civilizations. To the east stood China, with its bureaucratic sophistication and long imperial tradition. To the south lay Persia, rich in administrative knowledge, urban culture, and statecraft. To the west, the Islamic world was expanding rapidly, reshaping political and cultural landscapes. The Turks interacted with all of them. These encounters were not merely military. They were moments of observation and learning. The Turks did not blindly imitate other civilizations, nor did they reject them outright. Instead, they absorbed what was useful. They learned how cities were governed, how taxes were collected, how legitimacy was constructed, and how religion could unify diverse populations. Islam and the transformation of Turkic identity. One of the most profound transformations in Turkic history began in the 8th century with the gradual adoption of Islam. This was not a sudden or forced conversion. It unfolded over generations, driven by trade, diplomacy, shared enemies, and cultural proximity. For many Turkic groups, Islam did not feel alien. Its emphasis on justice, order, loyalty, and community resonated deeply with existing Turkic values. Islam gave the Turks something they had never fully possessed before, a place within a vast, interconnected civilization. It linked them to trade networks stretching from Central Asia to the Mediterranean. It provided a moral and legal framework that transcended tribal divisions. Most importantly, it offered political legitimacy. Before Islam, Turkic rulers derived authority primarily from lineage, charisma, and military strength. After Islam, they could also claim religious legitimacy. This changed everything. Different tribes, once divided by ancestry and geography, could now unite under a shared belief system. Crucially, Islam did not erase Turkic traditions. Instead, it merged with them. Steppe customs blended with Islamic law, producing a unique political and social model. This synthesis would define Turkic states for centuries to come. As Turks became defenders and champions of the Islamic world, their role shifted dramatically. They were no longer peripheral actors. They became military leaders, governors, and eventually rulers of key Islamic regions. This transformation laid the groundwork for permanent settlement and empire building far beyond Central Asia. the westward movement, and the Oghuz Turks. As political pressure increased in Central Asia, driven by rival nomadic groups, environmental challenges, and shifting power balances, large Turkic populations began moving westward. Among these groups, the Oghuz Turks would play the most decisive role in shaping the future. This movement was not chaotic migration. It was strategic and gradual. The Oghuz moved in waves, settling temporarily, testing new territories, forming alliances, and learning how to coexist with sedentary populations. Each stage of movement strengthened their political awareness and adaptability. As they advanced westward, the Oghuz encountered Persian and Islamic cultures more deeply. Instead of rejecting these influences, they integrated them. Persian administrative practices, Islamic scholarship, and Turkic military traditions merged into a powerful and flexible system. From this environment emerged the Seljuks. At first, they were just one clan among many, but they understood something crucial. Power in the medieval world required legitimacy. Military strength alone was not enough. By embracing Sunni Islam and presenting themselves as protectors of the Islamic order, the Seljuks gained the support of religious scholars and urban elites. This alliance transformed them from steppe warriors into imperial rulers. By the time they reached the borders of Anatolia, the Seljuks were no longer nomads searching for land. They were an experienced imperial force, shaped by centuries of migration, governance, and adaptation. Anatolia was not an accident. It was the next logical step. The Mongol storm. Then came the Mongols. When Genghis Khan built the largest land empire in history, the political balance of Eurasia was shattered. Cities fell, borders vanished, and long-established powers collapsed. To many contemporaries, this seemed like the end of the old world. For the Turks, the Mongol invasions were devastating. States were destroyed, populations displaced, and political structures dismantled. Yet even in this destruction, something crucial was happening. The Mongol armies were not purely Mongol. Their backbone consisted largely of Turkic soldiers. Turks fought the wars, occupied the lands, and stayed behind to govern them. The Mongols conquered, but the Turks remained. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, his empire depended too heavily on his personal authority to remain unified. It was divided among his sons and grandsons, forming several successor states. This fragmentation is often seen as the decline of Mongol power. In reality, it marked the beginning of a new phase. Each successor Khanate ruled over regions with dense Turkic populations. A Mongol elite governed a Turkic majority. Over time, this imbalance became unsustainable, from Mongol rule to Turkic dominance. Gradually, the character of these states began to change. The Mongols remained symbolic rulers, but the daily functioning of government increasingly fell into Turkic hands. Military organization, taxation systems, administration, and even court culture became Turkic in nature. Nowhere was this transformation clearer than in the Golden Horde. Founded by a Mongol prince, it rapidly became Turkified in language, culture, and identity. When its rulers adopted Islam, the state fully embraced a Turkic Islamic character. A similar process unfolded in Iran and Anatolia. Mongol authority weakened over time, Turkic commanders gained influence, and local Turkish principalities emerged to fill the vacuum. What initially appeared as Mongol domination slowly transformed into Turkic control. The conquerors passed. The administrators, soldiers, and settlers remained. Anatolia reborn. In Anatolia, the collapse of Mongol power created a decisive moment. A political vacuum formed, and the Turks were uniquely prepared to fill it. Principalities emerged not as fragile frontier groups, but as the product of centuries of experience. Steppe warfare, Islamic governance, and imperial tradition combined into a new political reality. Among these principalities, the Ottomans would ultimately rise above the rest. They understood how to turn opportunity into permanence. They inherited not only land, but a political tradition shaped by the Turkic-Mongol synthesis, strong central authority, disciplined armies, and flexible administration. From the ruins of the Mongol age, a new era was born. The enduring legacy. In the end, the Mongols passed through history like a storm, powerful, destructive, and temporary. The Turks remained. They adapted to every collapse, absorbed every influence, and rebuilt every system they encountered. From Central Asia to Anatolia, from nomadic tribes to world empires, they transformed instability into continuity. The death of Genghis Khan was not the end of an era for the Turks. It was the moment history shifted gears. And from that moment on, the future of Eurasia would be shaped, not by those who conquered briefly, but by those who stayed, governed, and endured. Empires rose and fell. Storms passed through history. But what truly shaped Eurasia was not the speed of conquest. It was the ability to endure. From the steppes of Central Asia to the lands of Anatolia, the Turks adapted to every collapse, absorbed every influence, and rebuilt every system they encountered. The death of Genghis Khan was not the end of an era for the Turks. It was the moment history changed direction. And from that moment on, the future of Eurasia was shaped not by those who conquered briefly, but by those who stayed, governed, and endured. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.